Healthy over the holidays doesn't have to be boring. You can still have a green bean casserole that's crunchy, creamy, and bright without compromising the flavor. But before we dive in, let's break it down. Green bean casserole is super popular in my family. So for the holiday season, it gets a little busy, and I really like to prep everything ahead of time. And this is a really good step to have any little helping hands around the kitchen. They can wash produce, they can also measure produce. One of the things that you can prep ahead of time is to harvest your green beans. So here in Raleigh, we're garden zone 8A, and usually we harvest our green beans in warmer months. Maybe the last harvest is the end of summer, but this year we've had such great temperatures that we were actually able to harvest some green beans this week, the very end of November, which is very exciting. So we get to have those throughout the colder months. So today we are going to focus on swapping different things that can be fun and also help maintain our health goals. To get started, you want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees. So now let's go over to our oven and we will get started. Sodium is one of those nutrients that's typically overconsumed in the United States, but that's usually from packaged food, processed food, or eating out. And today we're making everything from scratch. We want to start with a big pot of water. We want to get this up to a rolling boil. And we actually want to add sodium at this stage, so we're adding flavor into every step of the process. So you only want to cook the beans in the boiling water for about 3 minutes. Really use your senses to know when it's time to remove the beans, when that color is nice and vibrant. We want to use a slotted spoon to remove the beans from the boiling water and place them into the ice bath. This is going to cool the beans back down to room temperature in a process called shucking. This is going to help to preserve the texture and the color of our beans. Once they're cooled down, you can use the slotted spoon to transfer them onto a dry towel and remove all of the excess moisture. In a green bean casserole, our crispy onion topping is the co-star. So instead of getting a crispy onion topping from the store, we are going to be making it from scratch. So we'll start off by adding olive oil to our pan. We're going to add our onions. So for the onions, you want them cut really thin so you can get that crispy texture from them. So we'll go ahead and add those in. We went with olive oil for this stage of the recipe because it's high in unsaturated fat, and you can tell it's high in unsaturated fat because it's a liquid at room temperature, whereas a saturated fat like butter is going to be solid at room temperature. Unsaturated fats are better for heart health, so we want to prioritize those and make that swap when we can. You can tell when the red onions are beginning to be at the desired texture when it starts losing that purplish color. So we're going to take these out of the pan so that we can move on to the next step. So we're going to use the same pan and add just a little bit of the extra olive oil into there, although we still have some left in the pan. And then we're going to add in our panko breadcrumbs. So the panko is going to help with crunch and texture. And we want to separate it from the onion because the onion is 89% water. So we don't want to mix those right now because that excess water from the onion will absorb into the breadcrumbs, giving us kind of a soggy topping. We do want to stir it often though, so then we can get a nice even brown. We're gonna transfer these into a bowl. Now that our breadcrumbs are out, we're going to add some Parmesan cheese and a little bit of salt and pepper, and then give that a really nice stir so it's all combined, and we'll just set it aside. I just put some olive oil into a heated pan. We have it about medium heat for now, and we can increase it once we get our ingredients in. And next we're gonna add a little bit of sage. So this is from our garden. We talked about infusing flavor at every step. This is one of those steps. So we wanna kind of crisp up this sage, get it in the oil before we add our mushrooms in. And if you were here, you would be able to smell it because it smells so good. So we've gotten a little bit of the sage flavor into the oil, and you can see it's really sizzled now. I just keep it in for about a minute or two just while that oil is heating up, and then you can remove these leaves because you don't want them to cook so much that they burn. Now we are going to add our clean, washed, and cut mushrooms to the pan. We're going to cook our mushrooms now on medium-high heat. And you can tell when they get cooked because they start losing that white color and start becoming darker. They're going to get a lot smaller as that water starts to evaporate out. And something we're gonna do to help that process is add a little bit of salt. So mushrooms have something called umami. So that's gonna give a really earthy, strong depth of flavor to our dish. And if you're someone that isn't crazy about the texture of mushrooms, which I will admit I am that person, you can cut the mushrooms up into smaller pieces, and that can be really helpful for littles that are just starting to learn to like mushrooms. So our mushrooms are pretty close to done here, so we're gonna go ahead and add our minced garlic. Now we only need to cook this for a minute or two. All right, now that the garlic has cooked down a little bit, you can see it's kind of changed its color. We're gonna add in some flour. This is gonna give our sauce a little bit of thickness. Just gonna add that right on over and we can mix it in. And once the flour has completely coated all of the mushrooms, we're going to go in and add our broth. Broth time. All right, we are starting to add the liquid portion of the sauce. So we're going to slowly introduce each one, making sure that everything is at room temperature and not cold. And this is really nice to have another person in the kitchen helping you, just because they can stir while you start to pour in things. So next up, we're gonna add the Parmesan. So we can go ahead and sprinkle that in. We're doing about half a cup, and that's gonna melt into the sauce, add some extra thickness, add some extra flavor. What I'm also gonna do is add a bit more sage. So we want this to melt together and simmer to thicken a little bit more. You don't want quite this runny consistency in the casserole. So we'll add some salt, we'll add some pepper, and then some sage, and let that all simmer together and thicken. So luxurious. All right, so our sauce is done. I want to go ahead and remove that sage because it's done its job. We've gotten the flavor we need from it. And now we'll fold in those green beans. I'm gonna do about half of it so then I can fold in a little. And when something says fold, it just means to gently mix back and forth. And you can see that it's starting to get that iconic green bean casserole texture. This is our baby, our casserole baby. You wanna make sure you get all of that sauce in there. So we are transferring this mixture straight into our baking dish. Once you have the green bean layered down, we're gonna go ahead and add our onion mix. This could be a job for little hands in the kitchen. All right, and then we have our onions down, so now we're gonna add that crispy goodness. And so I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle this on top. And this is also a really good job for any helpers in the kitchen with little hands or big hands. This is gonna go straight into the oven at 375 for about 30 minutes. Kind of depends on how much you like your casserole to be crispy on the top. This is our finished product, and we are pretty happy with how it turned out. We do have some extra garnishes here, some lemon juice if you're interested in kind of making that flavor a little bit more fun. We also have some parsley here. This is a great side dish to complete your My Plate. It's full of vegetables, nutrients, while still being low in saturated fat and sodium. Thank you for being with us this year. We look forward to sharing more tips and tricks and how to bring your garden into the kitchen in the new year. Comment below on what kind of healthy swaps you'll be making this holiday season. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and always remember to stay po-fit.